to me, one of the most admirable traits anyone can have is to come down from a really low place and come back up. My books are a lot about the bad things that happen and the different ways in which people try to find, both good and bad to come out of those dark spots.
The next section will be discussing the suffering of your protagonist. In order for us to appreciate and see the range of your protagonist, you need to make sure your hero suffers. When the main character suffers, we witness how they handle and react to their problems, and it is only through suffering that we are able to see the other side of this character.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
Think about the times when you've done good deeds for others. The truth is, it's easier for us to do good things for others when we feel good about ourselves. This doesn't mean rich people are generous and poor people are greedy. It does mean our perspective of ourselves influences how easy it is for us to make the right choices. When the perspective of who we are and our appreciation for life suffers, is it not harder to persevere your integrity and your moral compass?
Sure, it's easy to be a ninja when everything's going your way, but it's times like these, when the chips are down, that a ninja shows his true character. I'm getting woozy. Shut up, Butters.
I think that when we are at our lowest point, our true, raw self begins to show. Will you continue to help others, or will you consider only looking after your own needs? But don't think only good characters make good decisions at their absolute low. Good characters make bad decisions too. In fact, having a character suffer greatly and in turn make bad decisions, then seeing the consequences of their actions really strengthens that character. It is by stripping the character down to their raw, true self that a good character can emerge from the story. For my examples of good and bad suffering, I will be using the category of superhero blockbusters. I really can't think of many examples where the hero suffers as much as Peter Parker suffers in Spider-Man 2. This was the best movie in the trilogy, and I think in part it's due to how much Peter gets screwed over in the movie. At the beginning of the story, Peter loses his job. From there, Peter's disgraced with accepting very little payment for a photo, only to have the Daily Bugle thrash Spider-Man's reputation. He is continually harassed for rent from his landlord, and he struggles to make ends meet.
Don't try to sneak past me. I have ears like a cat and eyes like a rodent.
Thanks, Mr. Dickovich.
Peter's powers then as Spider-Man begins to flake out on him, failing in the middle of battles. And because of Peter's morals, he chooses not to date the girl he's in love with, Mary Jane, so as to not risk her life because of his path as a hero. And so Peter loses her to someone else. Even then, because of Peter's obligations as Spider-Man, he disappoints Mary Jane as a friend so much to the point that she begins to hate him. Peter's grades are declining, and he even loses his best friend Harry Osborn. In many superhero movies, we normally see the glorified perspective of being admired and loved by everyone, saving the girl, being the hero everyone wants to be. But the responsibilities this role requires and the consequences they yield are rarely explored as well as they are in Spider-Man 2. Peter, through his morals, chooses to be Spider-Man and endures the suffering that inevitably occurs. He must make a decision that if his ability to live his own life is worth the saving of innocent strangers. And without the suffering, we would have never seen Peter forced to make the choices that he makes, and so we dig down deep into the raw core of Peter. Is Peter Parker just Peter Parker? Or is Peter Parker a hero? If Peter's life was easy, we would have never found out the answer to this question. It would have been easy for Peter to just remain a hero throughout the movie.
Lord knows, kids like Henry need a hero. Courageous, self-sacrificing people, setting examples for all of us. Everybody loves a hero. People line up for them, cheer them, scream their names, and years later they'll tell how they stood in the rain for hours just to get a glimpse of the one who taught him to hold on a second longer. I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble. and finally allows us to die with pride, even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
Another way this movie succeeds in Peter's suffering is the pacing of the suffering itself. All the tragedy hits Peter one at a time. So we've seen how being cruel to Peter really paid off for the sake of the movie. But if the hero doesn't suffer much in the movie, the opposite occurs. We miss the full range of that main character, and miss seeing the raw choices that character is forced to make when they're at their low point. Clark Kent in Man of Steel is a good example of this opposite effect. Sure, Clark's bullied when he's little, and he loses his father figure, but let's be honest, every superhero loses a parent, and the suffering we do see Clark endure is suffering that occurs years before the story really begins. There are no big moments through the present time in the movie that Clark is reduced down. What results is a lack of witnessing the raw character of Clark Kent. So to us, Clark Kent is just a flat persona that Superman is when he's not Superman. Now let's apply suffering to your own story. First, make a list of absolutely everything your hero has. It can be physical things, like their lover, their job, their car, or house. But also think of things that they take for granted, their identity, their ability to walk, their sense of purpose. Consider what from this list to take away from the hero. Don't just pick everything that you wrote down on your list, otherwise it will take up the whole story. Think about the following questions. What causes this thing to be taken away from your hero? How does your hero react? How does this change the hero's stance on the theme of your story? What actions do your hero take as a result of the suffering? Consider the good and bad choices your hero will decide. Next, when outlining your story, spread out the suffering as much as you can. Get creative here. Don't just have the first half of your story consist of nothing but suffering. Try something like knocking down your hero a couple pegs. Then maybe allow your hero to win a few battles. Then once their outlook is looking up, just wreak havoc on their world.